game, the longest in World Series history, and that was for the Dodgers just to get one win.
And for you, Brian Kilmeade, to say that they are the best team in baseball this year, being a dyed-in-the-wool Yankees fan, it says a lot.
Steve, I would say this. I'm a Met fan who doesn't hate the Yankees, which is rare for this studio. But I'm really, I'm still waiting for the Mets to play Major League Baseball.
Good luck.
They might have done that by hiring a general manager over the weekend.
Congratulations to the Red Sox. They deserve it. They have a great team. I'm sure they are having a lot of fun in Boston. But let's talk about some other news as well.
We are getting our first look at some of the victims of the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting on this Monday morning.
Among them, you have a 97-year-old Holocaust survivor and a pair of brothers. The family says they were inseparable.
Got David Lee Miller. He's live in Pittsburgh, where the community is pulling together. David.
That's right, Brian. Good morning from the Squirrel Hill neighborhood. Behind me, the Tree of Life Synagogue. It is still a crime scene. You can see that there is still police tape set up along the perimeter. On Saturday morning, authorities say 46-year-old Robert Bowers killed 11 people here. He entered the building with 3 handguns and an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle. They say he used all 4 weapons in his rampage. An FBI affidavit quotes him as saying, during the rampage, they are committing genocide to my people. I just want to kill Jews. The U.S. attorney has now indicated that he has started the process to seek the death penalty. Meanwhile, for the first time now, survivors are speaking out. Barry Werber was only feet away from the gunman inside the synagogue, but he miraculously went unnoticed.
He didn't see us, thank God. The only thing I had in my hand was a cell phone, and it's a dumb phone, so it doesn't light up when I'm talking on it. I could see that he looked around only because there was a shaft of light as he opened the door. He stepped over Mel's body, didn't pay any attention, stepped back, and walked out.
At last word, authorities said the gunman Bowers was being treated for injuries he sustained in his shootout with police at a local hospital. He's reported in fair condition, and later today, guys, he will have his initial court appearance here in Pittsburgh. Back to you.
David Lee Miller, thank you. The Holocaust survivor was 80 years old, parking a car out in front of the synagogue and cheated death by 4 minutes. Was 7 years old when he experienced the Holocaust, but was supposed to be in the synagogue and was outside parking a car in a handicapped spot, and a police officer was talking to that driver.
So he missed it.
That's right. The oldest victim was 97 years old. The youngest was 54, one of those 2 brothers.
All you hear about is that, this guy kept to himself. He never really talked to anybody. Somebody who's known him since, a parent that knew him since high school, can't believe it, didn't think he would ever hurt a fly. Meanwhile, had multiple guns. He was posting a lot of this anti-Semitic, his beliefs, and then he acts the way he acts. It's ironic, too, that evidently Homeland Security did go in and case out the synagogue and did an assessment on possible being a target, just part of their normal procedure, they say.
Right, they were requested. It does look as if the feds are going to request the death penalty for this person. And while so many people are trying to figure out, what is going on, who is to blame for something like that, a lot of people on television yesterday know exactly who to blame. Watch.
At the center, an unapologetically incendiary president.
Our national political culture is motivating folks who are inspired by hate, by fear, by bigotry.
It's hard not to look at it and see that it is connected. We've seen this rise in sort of a hot political rhetoric.
I think this president's whole modus operandi is to divide us.
Not letting the Republican Party off the hook. They are the beneficiaries of racism in America, right?
I mean, this is so unbelievable that we had the bomber trauma last week we didn't know where these mail bombs were coming from, and that thankfully there was no blasting material in it. We find that guy, and he is a Trump supporter, but he had a criminal record dating back to 2002 when Donald Trump was hosting The Apprentice. Now, to think that the president could somehow be suspend disbelief, especially when he has great links to the Jewish community at home and abroad. He has a daughter who converted, a son-in-law who's playing a key role in his administration, who means so much to him at his right hand. And then you have a situation where you have this person happen to hate Donald Trump.
How about blaming the guy who did this? He is a sick guy, says, I just want to kill Jews. The vice president said, look, everyone has their own style, and frankly, people on both sides of the aisle use strong language about our political differences, but I just don't think you can connect it to threats or acts of violence, and I don't think the American people connect it.
Well, this shooter hated Donald Trump, thought he was a globalist, didn't vote for him, and never apparently ever owned a MAGA cap. In the meantime, the president of the United States tweeted this out. The fake news is doing everything in their power to blame Republicans, conservatives, and me for the division and hatred that has been going on for so long in our country. Actually, it is their fake and dishonest reporting which is causing problems far greater than they understand. We're going to talk to Kellyanne Conway, Counselor to the President of the United States, live from the White House at 7:30 on this Monday morning.
You got 300 million people plus in this country.
Most of them just want unity.
Yeah, don't let this person represent
Correct.
Americans.
Correct.
All right. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about this. Fox News alert: another caravan has formed. It looks as if over the weekend, another 200 people left San Salvador, and there you can see portions of one of the caravans bursting through that border fence at Guatemala, and we've seen that before.
U.S. military started to move in some more barriers. You have 2,000 National Guardsmen that are already down there on the border, and these additional troops are going to provide logistical and other support, air support, equipment, vehicles, and tents.
And this time they're bringing out Jersey barriers. They're taking Jersey barriers to our southern border to put them up to stop the folks.
And General Mattis has already made 800 troops available to go down there. Plus, we have National Guard already there and Border Patrol. Keep in mind, I watched President Obama over the weekend disingenuously say, why are we afraid of people coming from the South? All these poor people coming in here, why are we afraid of them? No one's afraid of anybody. It's a matter of securing our border and finding out who's coming in and coming out. The one element, a small element of this is, 20% of people that cross our border illegally have criminal records. That's a fact. So you would think if you just take those percentages, there's an additional problem. The whole problem is, the issue is, our laws, our secure borders, and are we going to know who's coming in and going out? It's not a matter of being afraid of crime or afraid of physical. That's another small element of this.
The whole idea is do it the right way. Do it the legal way. Sign the guest book. Our Secretary of Homeland Security made it very clear to the caravan, stop, you're not getting in.
There's a legal way to enter this country. Those who choose to enter illegally will be stopped. My general message to this caravan is do not come. You will not be allowed in. There is a right way to emigrate to the United States, and this is not it.
Meanwhile, there was an election in Brazil, and that's what we're going to go to next. A Fox News alert. Thousands flood the streets in Brazil overnight to celebrate the nation's new president-elect.
That's right. Jair Bolsonaro is his name, I believe, often compared to President Trump, cruising to victory weeks after he was stabbed on the campaign trail. That is a race he'll never forget.
They've basically jailed their last two leaders for being above and beyond corrupt. And they wanted to bring in someone from the outside who spent very little of his own money in order to win. Rob Schmidt is in our New York City newsroom with this historic election result. Hey, Rob.
Crazy story. And the sitting president, I read, had like a 2% approval rating or something like that. So they wanted change in Brazil. They got it. They call this guy the Trump of the tropics, guys. Jair Bolsonaro becoming the first conservative elected president in Brazil in nearly 30 years. This far-right candidate giving a victory speech late last night after being declared the winner of a runoff election in Latin America's largest country, the win marking yet another rise in conservatism around the globe, or another example of it. Bolsonaro often compared to President Trump, defeating the left-wing Workers' Party handsomely by about 10 points. The former Army captain energizing supporters throughout the campaign, promising to crack down on crime and rampant corruption in that country. His movement representing widespread anger at the political class, which we're seeing all around the globe. We've seen it in Italy as well. Bolsonaro still recovering after suffering a life-threatening stab wound at the hands of a political opponent in early September. He got through that to win. House Democrats sent Secretary of State Mike Pompeo here in the U.S. a letter on Friday asking him to condemn the Brazilian politician. That'll likely not happen. The group citing concerns for rising threats to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law in Brazil. The White House says the president has called to congratulate this new world leader overnight. Bolsonaro will take office on January 1st, is pledging to govern with the Bible and the Brazilian Constitution in mind. So a far-right candidate wins the presidency in Brazil. What a story.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing, too. Thanks, Rob. After the corruption with the Olympics and the World Cup, the people of Brazil have had it. They've seen none of that revenue and a bunch of boondoggles.
New leader. All right, 12 minutes after the top of the hour. Jillian, good morning to you.
Good Monday morning. We have a lot of news to get to. So let's begin with this Fox News alert. A massive rescue mission underway after a passenger plane plunges 5,000 feet into the sea off the coast of Indonesia. The brand new Lion Air jet's pilot reported technical difficulties just minutes after takeoff, then vanished off radar. All 189 people on board are believed to be dead. That same plane experienced a technical problem on its last flight. The man accused of sending more than a dozen suspicious packages to prominent Democrats will appear in court for the first time today. Cesar Sayoc is set to face a judge in Miami. Sayoc's sister telling the New York Times about his recent strange behavior, saying, quote, he just started getting weirder. He is expected to be transferred to New York for prosecution. Let's look at some of your headlines we're following. I'll send it back to you.
Another busy day.
Yeah.
All right, Jillian, thank you. All right, still ahead on this Monday. Protesters dragged out of Marsha Blackburn's campaign rally, 7 of them last night, kicking and screaming. Some of them even yelling at her during a moment of silence for the synagogue victims in Pittsburgh.
Really?
You can bet Dan Bongino is fired up about that, and he joins us live very shortly.
Oh, man. Plus, could the third time be the charm for Hillary Clinton?
Do you want to run again?
No.
Wait.
No.
That was a pause.
Well, I'd like to be president.
Okay.
Closer to the border, this as the president will reportedly announce a sweeping border plan as soon as tomorrow. So what needs to be done? Let's talk to our next guest. Her son, Police Sergeant Brandon Mendoza, was brutally murdered by an illegal back in 2014. Angel mom Marianne Mendoza joins us now live from Phoenix. Marianne, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I know you've heard the strong words of Kristen Nielsen, the Homeland Security Secretary. Don't come. You will not be allowed in. Nonetheless, you're disappointed in Washington, aren't you?
I am. You know, these pro-illegal groups and our politicians are basically sending the message out to the world that America's borders are open and we're welcoming anybody and everybody here. And you know, thank goodness that we have a president who's standing up to it. What's disappointing is that before he even does any actions, people are already preparing lawsuits, you know, to stop him in his tracks. And red-blooded Americans are sick and tired of seeing this happen. We elected this man into office to make the changes that he promised, and this is what we want to have done. We want our borders closed. We need to know who's coming into our country. The same thing with the security at the airports. Look at how you are scrutinized at the airport. Why isn't this happening at our borders?
Well, you were at our border over the weekend down in Arizona. You went with some Angel families to see what?
We wanted to be able to take some photos and have an opportunity to let them see what 320 miles of our Arizona-Mexico border looks like. And it is barbed wire fencing and Normandy fencing, and that is all that we have. And the ranchers in southern Arizona have been dealing with this invasion of our country, you know, all of their lives down there.
Right.
Sue Krantz, rancher's wife, her husband Rob Krantz was killed in 2010 by cartel on their ranch in southern Arizona. She joined us, and it's frightening to see what our southern border is, and knowing that these amount of people are heading our way every year.
Well, you know, Marianne, what we're hearing from people, and Griff Jenkins is embedded for us with the Caravan, what we hear from them is they're just going to the United States. They need a job. They believe the rules for asylum will allow them in just to get a job. That's not true. But do you feel for them knowing that they are just trying to have a better life?
There's a certain part of me that does, but I know what this element can bring to our country. I have personally been affected. My son paid the ultimate price for these policies, and the politicians, these special interest groups, and the UN are basically sending the message out now that America's wants and needs are no longer important. We need to step down and shut up. And red-blooded Americans are not going to do that. We elected the man into office who can do that.
Right.
Follow through with those promises and make this happen.
All right. Marianne Mendoza joining us today from Phoenix with her point of view. Marianne, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. What do you think about that? Email us, friends@foxnews.com. Meanwhile, this rabbi said a prayer for America with the president after the synagogue shooting. He says now we need unity more than ever. He will join us live coming up next. For you, a 9th child is dead after a viral outbreak at a New Jersey long-term care center. There have been 25 cases tied to the adenovirus outbreak at the center that specializes in taking care of medically fragile children. The Centers for Disease Control is investigating the case in New Jersey. And another potentially deadly health issue for children, peanut allergies. A study out of New York's Mount Sinai Hospital finds cases of the food intolerance in children have more than tripled in the United States, from 1 in 250 in 1997 to 1 in 70 in 2008. Doctors think the spike could be because parents are keeping their children too clean and not allowing them to build up their immune systems. And that, they think, could be part of the problem. All right, Brian Ainsley.
All right, Steve, thanks. 24 minutes after the hour. After a gunman shouting, "All Jews must die," invaded a Pittsburgh synagogue and killed 11 people Saturday, President Trump asked Rabbi Benjamin Sendro to say a prayer for America.
We pray today for moral clarity. Let us not dismiss this as an act of insanity, but let us see it for what it is, an act of evil. Those who love God hate evil, and this is a nation that loves its God, and this is a nation that hates evil.
That was Rabbi Benjamin Sendro. He joins us now to explain why unity is needed more than ever now. Thank you so much, Rabbi, for joining us. I heard your prayer. It was beautiful. You said you wanted healing and comfort for the families. You said you had a heavy heart and you're sorrowful. The president said he was speaking in Indiana, and then this tragedy happened on Saturday, and he wanted a rabbi and he wanted a pastor to stand up before he spoke to the crowd. And he called you that day. Tell us how it all happened.
I don't answer my phone on the Sabbath, but I kept getting a phone call from Washington, one after the next, over and over and over. And it suddenly occurred to me, a dear friend of mine's daughter lives in Washington and just had a baby. God forbid, what if there was an emergency with the baby? So I answered, and it turned out to be the White House staff asking if I could join the president at Bankers Life Fieldhouse here in Indianapolis to offer a prayer for Pittsburgh. Normally, I would not drive on the Sabbath, but to pray for those victims and to do so at the request of the President of the United States, I felt it was the right thing to do.
And you just you had to come up with that prayer. Would you have 20 minutes notice? I wouldn't know what that would be like, but what was going through your mind at the time? Like, what goes into something like that?
Pray from your heart. You don't have time to prepare. I didn't have time to write anything out. I just said, I will go out there and I will pray from my heart. And that's what I did.
Will you speak from your heart right now and tell us a message that for this country, because we're so divided and we do need unity?
We're divided in many ways, it's true. But there are other ways in which we are united. And one of those ways is in our contempt for this sort of hatred, for this sort of senseless violence, for the meaningless taking of human life. In that sense, the vast majority of Americans are united. And I think the best way for us to counter this sort of thing is by making that clear, joining arms, whether it's literally or figuratively, and standing up against these acts of hatred.
Rabbi, in practical terms, every synagogue, I think, was protected. I know on Long Island, they were everywhere. There were cops everywhere. They're in uniform. But in the long term, a month, 2 months, 3 months from now, How do you plan on making those synagogues safe? The president gut reaction was, let's put an armed guard in there everywhere. What do you say?
We are working very hard right now to increase our security significantly at my synagogue. At the same time, we don't want to turn into a walled fortress. We want to remain open and welcoming. So that's a very fine line we have to tread and a delicate balance to achieve. But we are doing our best to achieve it. We are certainly taking several steps. I think maybe it's best that I not specify what they are, but on various levels we're increasing our security, and I'm sure every other synagogue is.
And these men, they don't want to have resistance. They want victims. They don't want to fight. And if they know there's going to be a fight, they will not show up in most cases. So hopefully we could do that everywhere.
I know these individuals were innocent. Rabbi Sindro, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure. I wish it was under better circumstances.
Me too.
All right, thank you. 29 minutes now after the hour. All right, we move ahead. Most college students are apparently afraid to disagree with their professors. Whatever happened to free speech? We'll examine that.
Plus, the migrant caravan is on the move again this morning. Griff Jenkins is traveling with the caravan. He is live as it heads for the border. We'll talk to him coming up next. Plus, reaction from
is back on the move this morning.
Thousands of people marching on up to the United States after stalling over rising tensions.
Griff Jenkins is embedded with the migrant caravan in southern Mexico. He joins us live as he travels north with them. Griff, I was reading that yesterday there was kind of a pause, but today they're taking off again, aren't they?
They are. Good morning, guys. You can see them behind me. This is the caravan about an hour ago started in the town of San Pedro Tepanetepec, and they're going about 30 miles north to the town of Niltepec. And what's interesting is we are standing here at an immigration checkpoint between those two towns. You can see they're just not checking anything. They're just letting them pass and go about their business. What's interesting is the little town of Niltepec, where they're going, has a population of 4,000. And so the caravan, by conservative estimates, is still 4,000 or 5,000 strong. So it's literally the size of the town. And we've talked a little bit with some of the officials, the national Mexican sort of health officials, saying that they're worried with these small towns that they won't have the resources they need. You see them going by. Buenos días. ¿Cómo estás? Yeah. ¿Cómo se llama? Griff? Yeah. ¿Qué piensas de oferta de México y el presidente Peña Nieto?
Que se ha portado bien con nosotros.
No. ¿Vaya a Estados Unidos?
Sí.
See. Okay, so that's just a very quick thing. You know, they don't want the offer of Mexico to get some asylum in these southern states of Oaxaca, where we are, Chiapas, where we were before. They were going to Mexico City, where some may decide to stay, although there is no offer from the government there. But most say they're going to go to the United States, despite the constant admonitions from Secretary Nielsen, President Trump, and the administration, as General Mattis puts resources on the border. But you can see they're coming. They're strong. They had a day of rest yesterday, and yesterday it was very interesting, guys. Over the weekend, we saw the group trying to police themselves because a big fight broke out over food. Food is scarce, and they were telling people to also clean up so that they don't get a bad reputation for littering in these small towns, guys.
That's exactly right. All right, Griff, who is live with the caravan down in Mexico, we thank you very much. As we learned last week from Griff, the caravan starts early before the sun is up because it is so hot there. They're trying to get a start on the day before the really hot weather rolls in.
Well, I'll tell you, he's hot under the collar, but he's in an air-conditioned studio. Dan Bongino joins us right now, former NYPD officer, former Secret Service agent, author of the brand new book, Spygate, The Attempted Sabotage of Donald J. Trump. Dan, welcome. We see the caravan out there, and I was just stunned to see President Obama just mocking the fact that we are looking at this caravan with a sense of concern, as if we feel as though the nation's going to be overrun by what he terms underprivileged or poor people. That's not the point, and he knows it.
Yeah, he does know, and that's what's deeply disturbing about this, Brian. There's really nothing irrational about Americans, tax-paying Americans, being concerned about thousands of people crossing the border not vetted. I mean, that we're having this conversation is almost strange, that we're being painted as irrational ones. You know, I was listening to you earlier in the show, and you brought up just a simple statistical point that's irrefutable. a significant percentage, maybe not a majority of, but a significant percentage of people entering on any given day are going to be stopped at the border for some kind of narco trafficking, criminal activity or otherwise. It's not a majority, it's not an overwhelming amount, but it's enough for us to be concerned. Therefore, by simple numbers, if thousands of people enter unvetted at any time, you're going to have people enter the country that shouldn't be here. That's not a fear tactic. That's just the truth, and I'm glad you brought that up.
What about diseases? I mean, there's a reason why you can't bring a kid to school unless he's inoculated. You know, there's things that happen in this country. We already give 40 to 50% of our taxable income to the government for social programs. Is it too much to say that we just can't have countries, entire populations come in here without being looked at as hard-hearted? To me, it's a practical way of having a nation that everyone looks up to and wants to be a part of. That's part of the reason why America's America. There's a process.
Brian, if this is allowed to continue, the caravan into the United States, then the border is meaningless. Now, and I mean that. I mean, what's the point of a border? If we can't stop individual narco traffickers and human trafficking across our border when they come in small groups, and we can't stop them in large groups, then I'm asking a reasonable question. What's the point of the border? Yeah. You can't stop small groups. You can't stop large groups. What's the point? And what's fascinating here is whenever it comes to the topic of illegal immigration, you ever notice it's only discussed by the left in terms of its effect on the people crossing the border illegally. It's almost never discussed on the effect illegal immigration has on border towns, border communities, the taxpayers in the United States in general. It's like our concerns are ignored, and we're only supposed to pay attention to the concerns of the people in the caravan, which is entirely irrational.
Dan, there was a campaign rally in Nashville for Marsha Blackburn, who was in a very close race there. Some protesters stood up while she asked for a moment of silence for those individuals that died at the synagogue on Saturday. During the moment of silence, some protesters stood up. They were escorted out, kicking, screaming. We have it on video. Watch this.
A moment of silence. Marsha Blackburn is a white supremacist.
I guess there can't be civility until Democrats win, right? That's a moment of silence for people who died.
I mean, really, is there footage you're going to see today that's any more gross than this? A moment of silence for the victims killed in this savage, horrific attack, and you're screaming Marsha Blackburn is a white supremacist. And the insane part about this whole thing is, again, we're supposed to take civility lessons from this radical far left. Now, listen, unlike what they do to us, that's not obviously epidemic of all Democrats, but you know they'll do that to us, the liberal media. It's not. It's a fringe group of people that do really dumb things. But I expect today the Democrat Party, and especially the Democrats in Tennessee, where that race is happening, to loudly denounce this kind of absurd, outrageous behavior in the name of civility. We're waiting to hear it.
Well, Phil Bredesen, who is currently trailing her by 6.5 points, in the Real Clear Politics Average, put out a statement yesterday and denounced it. But at the same time, he said, but Blackburn, essentially, supporters have hollered at him 37 times at his rallies.
Yeah, right, during a moment of silence. For what does that mean? I love the caveat he inserts in there to kind of create some kind of, moral equivalence here. This happens all the time. That's just the wrong thing to do. Can we just say that? Can we get to a point in this country where we just say when something is so incredibly black and white and wrong like that, that they just come out and say, no, we don't stand for this. This isn't us, not today, especially after the events of this weekend.
What about
the wrong thing to do?
All right, thanks, Dan. Good job.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys.
All right, 20 minutes till the top of the hour, and Jillian has some more headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good Monday morning. And a story that you have to hear. A brave dad at McDonald's with his children shoots and kills an armed suspect storming the restaurant. The father has life-threatening injuries. An employee there very grateful for his bravery.
He's my hero, because I can only imagine how it would have went if he wasn't on. We might not be here having this interview.
The dad started shooting after the masked gunman opened fire. One of his sons hit in the shootout is expected to be okay. The UK hopes to reform one of its most dangerous radical Islamist preachers with an educational course. Anjem Choudhury just released from prison for supporting ISIS. He must now complete a de-radicalization program with mentoring and theological advice. By June, 230 extremists will take the anti-terrorism course. If Choudhury doesn't show up for the sessions, he'll go back to prison. It looks like Hillary Clinton isn't exactly ready to give up on her White House dreams.
We're going to talk about 2020 in a minute. Do you want to run again?
No.
Wait.
No.
That was a pause.
Well, I'd like to be president.
Okay.
Clinton says she's not going to even think about it until after the midterm elections. Send it back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jillian.
So they didn't ask her if she's going to. Right. There's a difference. We'll
as long
see.
as you can be president without running.
Right.
So much
she doesn't
easier.
want to run, but she wants to be president.
Hey, I just got to tell you, I spent Saturday night with nuns. I was in New Orleans, and you know, if you watch my paperback's out, Andrew Jackson, Miracle of New Orleans, and the Ursuline nuns prayed for Andrew Jackson's victory, and he credits the Ursuline nuns with the victory. And we had a fundraiser for them. Oh, that's great. Where my book was at this beautiful home in New Orleans, in Baton Rouge.
That's great.
So that was, and you could see me. By the way, it was just great to meet them, and their history dates back to 1726 in this country. And here is where I'll be this weekend. On Friday at Schuler Books in Grand Rapids. On Saturday at 4 o'clock in Elkhart, Indiana. Center 615 is where I'll be. So hopefully I'll see you guys out there. As you guys know, the best thing about this tour, you get to meet everyone watching.
I love the nun story. That's so sweet.
They're so cool, and they gave me a statue. I think it's important.
Did you bless them like you did Cardinal Dolan? When he came on the set, you remember he went. He tried to do the cross symbol.
I went the wrong way on the cross.
I don't remember that.
Good for you, Brian. We're proud of you.
Thanks.
All right, that's great. All right, coming up on this Monday, crippling ISIS, pulling out of the Iran deal, and bringing American pastor Andrew Brunson home. President Trump has a long list of foreign policy wins. What kind of impact will that have on the midterms? We're going to talk about.
Plus, counselor to the president.
Morning and welcome back. A Fox News alert. At least 5 people are dead and 32 hurt in Halloween weekend gun violence in Chicago. Police say 3 men and a 16-year-old boy were shot and killed in drive-by attacks. Another man shot and killed during an ambush attack in a car. No suspects are in custody. Nearly 2,500 people have been shot in Chicago so far this year. Well, how about this story? He fell down a mine shaft, breaking both of his legs and fighting off a trio of rattlesnakes. Now, 2 weeks later, John Waddell is sharing his story of survival.
My rigging just broke. It was like a free fall. First thing I noticed was my leg was broke. I cinched it up and made like a makeshift splint. I kind of start moving around a little bit, and I see a third rattlesnake. I was able to kill him. I started hearing someone hollering back, and I broke down and started crying because I knew that, I'm going to get out of here.
Unbelievable. A friend found Waddell after he was missing for 2 days. Rescue crews pulled him out of the Arizona mine. Well, a somber week in Pittsburgh, carrying over to the NFL. The Steelers holding a moment of silence at Heinz Field to honor the victims of the Tree of Life synagogue shooting. On the field, the Steelers scoring a 33-18 win over the Cleveland Browns. The New Orleans Saints used timely turnovers to take care of the Minnesota Vikings late in the game, getting the 30-20 win. And the Rams are still the only undefeated team in the league after holding off the Green Bay Packers 29-27. And the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Jacksonville Jaguars 24-18 in London. During the trip, 4 Jaguars were arrested for walking out on a $64,000 bar tab. They were let go, and the team says it will handle any discipline. Well, the Boston Red Sox might be a dynasty, winning their 4th World Series since 2004. The team clinching the victory with a 5-1 win over the LA Dodgers in Game 5. Ray Bogan is live in Los Angeles with how Boston secured the big win and the party that I'm sure somewhere is still going on. Ray?
Hey, Jillian, good morning. The Dodgers were hoping to win last night and to bring the series back to Fenway Park, but the Red Sox just proved to be too much. There were a whole lot of Red Sox fans in the stadium last night, but check out this reaction from Boston. The streets and bars were packed with fans celebrating their 9th World Series win. Now, Game 5 was all about the long ball. It got off to a hot start with Steve Pearce hitting a 2-run home run for Boston in the top of the first. The Dodgers' David Freese immediately responded with a home run of his own, making it 2-1. But from then on, it was all Red Sox. Mookie Betts added a solo homer in the 6th. JD Martinez hit one in the 7th. Steve Pearce hit another in the 8th, making the final score 5-1. Pearce was the series MVP with 3 home runs and 8 RBIs.
Best feeling of my life. This is what you're growing up wishing that you could be a part of something like this, and with that special group of guys out there to celebrate with them, that was awesome.
Now, this wraps up an extraordinary season for the Red Sox, who won 108 games in the regular season and had dominating performances in the playoffs. They're already being called one of the best teams in franchise history. Now they're going to head on back to Boston. We're expecting the championship parade will be coming up here soon. The team wants it to be Wednesday morning, but we're still waiting for official confirmation from the city of Boston. Jillian, back to you.
All right, thanks, Ray. They've had so many parades as of late. It's not fair, Rob.
Boston has been solid. All right. We are just 8 days away from the highly anticipated midterm elections. But putting aside the rhetoric and the rallies, what are the issues that most voters are focused on? And what is going to lead to a win here, I guess, for which party? Here to debate that, Democratic strategist Dee Hawkins-Hagler and CEO of Golden State Consultants, Ashley Hayek. Good morning, ladies. Thank you so much for coming on today. We're going to pull up a graphic here that's going to show what we have as the top issues people are going to be voting on next Tuesday. And they are as follows. At 13%, and at the top there is health care, which might surprise a lot of people. 10% of voters want to rein in the president. 9% are going to be looking at the economy, which is very strong right now. 8% want Democrats to win the House, probably more than that, but that's the biggest topic for 8% of people polled. And 7% of people are going to be focusing in on immigration. Ashley, going to start with you. Healthcare at the top of that list. Does that surprise you at all?
Not really. I think it's been an issue that's come up, but I think what is most relevant here and what we're going to see people responding to is how well our country is doing moving forward. It's going to come down to voter turnout and voter intensity and what issues inspires people. Right now, we have a president who has delivered on everything that he said he's going to deliver on, from lowest unemployment rates amongst African Americans and Hispanics, lowest unemployment rate for women in 60 years. And you have the Democrat Party who has literally offered nothing. So what's your alternative? You have the Republicans who are doing something and moving the country forward, and Democrats who have really offered nothing except for some crazy rhetoric.
Dee, over to you. Obamacare right now is actually been gaining in popularity, which I think has shocked a lot of people on the Republican side. Why do you think that is?
Well, let's just think about it. Everyone in this country is concerned about access to affordable health care. Yeah. And so what's funny to me is watching the Republicans now use Obamacare talking points to try to energize their base. Many people now are concerned about pre-existing conditions. We are concerned about health care. And so we knew when this bill was first passed that it was going to be a winner, because people are genuinely care about their health care. They really do. So I can see it being at the top of the issue.
Yeah, Ashley, you even talked to a lot of Republicans. You talked to even Rick Scott in Florida, made a comment last week. He said, you know, he likes some parts of Obamacare. He wants to keep protections for people with pre-existing conditions, but he says everything else he doesn't like. Republicans have kind of moved a little bit left on health care, maybe out of necessity. What do you think?
You know, they have to do that. I mean, it's important. They have to.
Yeah.
Healthcare was one of the top issues. Healthcare was one of the top issues when President Trump was running, and there was a lot of people who were really unhappy with the cost that Obamacare put on people. And so, addressing the pre-existing conditions was a major part of this, and it's something that Republicans have said that they're going to stick to. However, it's still not solved, because if Obamacare did correct the situation, our healthcare crisis, we would not be having this conversation again.
Yeah. Dee, over to you. Economy and immigration.
I totally disagree with that.
Go ahead. No,
Let me go
that's
back to
fine.
the healthcare for 1 second. One of the main problems is when many of these states did not accept Medicaid expansion, it caused insurance prices to go up because many of them, had they engaged in the exchange, the prices would have gone down for the American people.
Yeah.
So the Republicans have to take the onus, and they did not do what they needed to do in making sure that Medicaid expansion was accepted all across this country.
I'm pretty sure that early on in after President Trump was elected, that Republicans wanted to have that health care conversation, but Democrats wouldn't come to the table. So
we can do healthcare all day long. Dee, let me ask you one last question. I want to get to economy and I want to get to immigration as well.
Yes. Okay.
What do you think about the Democrats' stance on immigration right now? It sounds like they don't want to talk a lot about this caravan and a lot of the rhetoric of open borders. How do you think that's going to play next Tuesday?
I think right now people are more concerned about our borders within the United States and domestic terrorism. But let me just say this. The Republicans are in charge of the White House. They're in charge of the Senate and the House. And they have failed to put together any type of comprehensive immigration bill. So the Republicans really need to look within themselves to try to figure out why they're not handling the immigration situation.
Okay,
I'll tell you why the Republicans weren't able to handle the immigration situation, and that's because earlier this spring,
we could do this all day, ladies. We got to cut it right there. I'm so sorry, but we could talk about this all day. We got to go. Highly anticipated election coming up next Tuesday. Thank you, ladies. 39 minutes after the hour, a political war of words brewing between Democratic donor Tom Steyer and President Trump.
What we're seeing is terrible behavior, consistent, systematic political violence from Republicans.
All right, now the president is firing back to that, and a royal resemblance.